Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Today we're going to be looking at the latest batch of spoilers for the upcoming D&D crossover set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Today, I'll only be covering a couple cards that are not either rare or mythic, and one of those will be You Come to a River. For 1 and a blue, it's an instant with choose one, fight the current, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, or find a crossing. Target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. I wanted to go over this card first because it's a perfect example of the D&D influence we're going to be seeing in this set, as well as a good example of how italicized ability keywords will be used in this set. As opposed to being mechanics like we're familiar with, for example Constellation or a little more recently Addendum, they seem to be mostly, if not entirely, for flavor, and I'm a fan of that. I think it will be a lot of fun to play with, especially in Limited, and cards that force you to make a choice like this really capture the spirit of a classic D&D campaign. That being said, I'm fairly unversed in D&D lore, so some of the legends we'll be covering later in the video, I'll be painfully ignorant about. I'd love it if anyone is familiar with D&D to let me know some background in the comments. But let's move on to an uncommon legend named Trelasarra Moondancer. For a green and a white, you get a 2/2 Elf Cleric with, when you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Trelasarra Moondancer and scry 1. So, a Johnny's Pride mate with two major differences. 1, legendary, so you can't have more than one out on the battlefield at a time, and 2, its triggered ability has the notable upside of scrying you 1 in addition to putting the counter on Trelasarra. If life gain is going to be a deck, I think there's a fair possibility this card could see play in it, especially after rotation. Although we'll be losing Heliod after rotation, so we'll have to see if the deck even remains. Our other multicolor card today is another legend, although I'm at least vaguely aware of this one. Xanathar Guild Kingpin. For 4, a blue and a black, you can cast this 5/6 Beholder with, at the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of the library at any time, and you may play the top card of the library, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast spells this way. Wow. This character's reputation precedes them, and this is a powerful card. In 2-player formats, you can pretty much lock a control player out of the game unless they can kill Xanathar on their own turn. I think it'll be more fun in Commander though, where you can throw a little politicking into the mix. Next, we have Icing Death, Frost Tyrant, and I'm already a fan of this card from the name alone. For 2 and 2 white, you get a 4/3 legendary dragon with flying, vigilance, and when Icing Death Frost Tyrant dies, create Icing Death Frost Tongue, a legendary white equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls, and equip 2. And we have 2 amazing arts for this one, done by Matt Stewart and Kieran Yanner respectively. The card itself seems pretty good, but I think the flavor is better than the practicality, because a 4/3 for 4 can pretty quickly get outclassed, and even though it has a dice trigger that creates a fairly powerful equipment, I'm not sure where it will see play, other than possibly as the high end in mono-white aggro decks, maybe even replacing Maul of the Skyclaves. Now, we'll take a break from legendary creatures for a second to look at a black artifact that turns a well-known D&D item into a magic card, Sphere of Annihilation. For X mana of any color and 1 black mana, Sphere enters the battlefield with X void counters on it, and at the beginning of your upkeep, exile Sphere of Annihilation, all creatures and planeswalkers with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it, and all creature and planeswalker cards in graveyards with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it. So it looks like we've got another mono-black board wipe that exiles, in the same vein as Extinction Event or Shadow's Verdict. Although I'd say this one's much more versatile than either of those, because it's good in the early game, where you can cast it for 2 or 3, and it's good in the late game, assuming you have the mana to deal with your opponent's more expensive creatures and planeswalkers. It's also notable that it exiles cards from the graveyard to prevent reanimation shenanigans or anything along those lines, but it's also notable that it doesn't exile the creatures right away, which could reduce the card's usefulness quite a bit. Often board wipes are a lifesaver when you're at a disadvantage and possibly only 1 or 2 combat steps away from death. But with Sphere, you'll have to give your opponent an entire turn before the creatures and planeswalkers get exiled. All things considered, I'm still excited to see if this card will make it into standard. But next, we've got Minion of the Mighty. a 0/1 Kobold for 1 red mana with Menace and Pack Tactics. Whenever a minion of the Mighty attacks, if you attacked with creatures with total power 6 or greater this combat, you may put a dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. This is another example of the italicized ability words that will be in the set, and it's also an example of a good support card for the Dragons deck that's been coming together for a little while now. And this is a very powerful ability, but you'll need to find a way to pump the minion's power if you want to get through for any damage in the early game. Following up on this cheap kobold, we have Flameskull, a mythic 3/1 skeleton for 1 and 2 red with flying. Flameskull can't block, and Rejuvenation. When Flameskull dies, exile it. If you do, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play one of those cards. Now, I'll be honest, I was a little confused by the way this card was phrased, but I think I understand it well enough now to possibly help you if you're also confused. Let's take a look at the reminder text. If you cast Flameskull this way, you can't play the other card, and vice versa. So when Flameskull dies, you exile it and the top card of your library. Until your next turn, you can either recast Flameskull or cast the top card of your library instead. You can't cast them both. You'll have to choose one or the other. And I think this is a definitely solid effect. You get some card advantage and a functionally immortal creature. This is just the kind of card mono-red aggro decks are looking for if they needed to get any better in the first place. Now it's time for the last non-land card of this video, and I think it's something you might have been waiting for. Tarrasque. And I can thank MTG Goldfish for the translation on not only this card, but a couple others in this video. Tarrasque is a 10/10 legendary dinosaur for 6 and 3 green. It has haste and ward 10 if it was cast, as opposed to being cheated onto the battlefield in some way. And whenever it attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls. This is a finisher if I've ever seen one. Ramp decks will likely be able to cast it long before turn 9, and then it can swing it for 10 immediately, as well as being almost impossible to deal with, because if they want to cast the spell or use an ability targeting it, they have to pay an additional 10 mana. I believe opponents in a game of Magic will be as filled with dread upon seeing one of these as a PC in a game of D&D might be. I might be wrong though. Anyway, let's move on to a cycle of monocolored creature lands, which we have one of for each of the 5 colors except for green as of now. When we get the green one, I'll put it into a follow-up video. Cave of the Frost Dragon is the first of this cycle we'll be looking at right now, and it, like the rest of these lands, only enters the battlefield untapped if you control just one other land. It also taps for white mana and has the option for it to become a 3/4 white dragon creature with flying until end of turn for 4 and a white. It's still a land. The blue one, Hall of the Storm Giant, has all the same text, except it can become a 7/7 blue giant creature with ward 3 for 5 and a blue. The black one, Hive of the Eye Tyrant, becomes a 3/3 black beholder creature with menace, and whenever this creature attacks, exile target card from defending player's graveyard for 3 and a black. Finally, the red one, Den of the Bugbear, becomes a 3/2 red goblin creature with whenever this creature attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking for 3 and a red. This looks to be a good cycle of lands, and I'm excited to see what the green one will be, maybe an owlbear or something along those lines. It won't be great for these to come in tapped, but at least there's the chance that you can play it early and it will be an untapped source of mana. That's going to be all for this video, but I plan on making another video today to cover all the spoilers we'll be seeing later, and of course you can count on me to making videos all throughout the spoiler season and then playing decks with these awesome new cards once it's over. It would be great if you liked this video, left a comment telling me what you're most excited for, and subscribed so you're made aware of all future videos, but I appreciate you just for watching. See you in the next one.